BMF Baltimore, Jam Master Jay, America Dope.
When it comes to drugs, only one word counts. No. Just say no.
Fatal shooting of a rap music legend. The shooting tonight in a recording studio in Queens, taking the life of the man known as Jam Master Jay, is real.
The men convicted of killing him were people that had close ties to him. One was his godson, the son of a childhood friend who had got who he had gotten a job for back in the day in the Run DMC era, working for Russell Simmons' company, Rush Management. And the other guy, the man who seems to be the ringleader in this, but not the trigger man, Ronald Tinard, Washington, was a guy Jam Master Jay grew up with and was in a crew of teenage burglars and thieves back in the late 70s. And Jam Master Jay graduated into music industry success, at least temporarily, whereas his buddies stayed mired in the streets, and the fact that he reached back to lend a helping hand, or out of convenience, he went back into the streets. It seems like it cost him his life. A cautionary tale. It's the night before Halloween, 2002, Hollis. Jam Master Jay is in his little studio, and there's a house full. There's a girl trying to audition. There's a couple of buddies sitting around. Uriel, Tony Rincon. There's Lydia High, who was the accountant for JMJ Records. And then there's Jay's partner in JMJ Records, Randy Allen. Randy Allen also grew up with Jay, and he had done a lengthy prison term for selling dope. Jay had helped him out when he got out, and they had JMJ Records together. Randy Allen had a group going with Jay's nephew, who was rapping under the name Bo Skaggs, a group called Rusty Waters. And Randy Allen was in the studio mixing and mastering that night, and Jay was nervous. He had been talking to people about having a problem. People had heard him with angry phone calls in the weeks leading up to the incident, and he had a gun sitting next to him. Boom! The door flies open. Jay reaches for the gun. One man, now convicted to be Ronald Tinard, Washington, tells everyone look at the floor, and the other one, the young guy, Carl Jordan, runs up to him, puts a gun to his neck, and says, "How about this?" Hits him 2 times. One of the other people, Tony Rincon, is hit in the leg. The 2 people flee. The door is held open by a third guy. Supposedly this guy, Jay Bryant, who's going to be tried later this year, was the only person whose DNA was found at the scene. Randy Allen claims he didn't see the gunman, but he ran outside with a gun after the killers, but he didn't see anybody.
Well, tonight, according to sources close to this investigation, 37-year-old Jason Mazzell, Jam Master Jay, was working in a recording studio here in Jamaica. He and a 25-year-old male Hispanic were relaxing in a lounge near the studio when a man walked into the studio, gun drawn, and opened fire. Mazzell was struck once in the head and killed instantly. The other man was seriously injured, shot once in the chest. Police have no one yet in custody.
So immediately, shockwaves run through America, because Jam Master Jay and Run DMC, once upon a time, were some of the biggest things going in the 1980s. And an outpouring of grief happens, and of course, the rumors start immediately. The first rumor was that Supreme McGriff had him done in. There was a rumor Supreme was messing with Jay's wife. That was never verified. It is true the Supreme and 50 Cent had a beef, Jay's one-time protege, but Jay wasn't benefiting off of what 50 Cent had going on. They had gone their separate ways, their business wasn't right, and it just didn't make sense. Though, interestingly enough, Ronald Tinard, Washington, the guy now convicted of being the man who told everybody to look at the ground, his girlfriend got on the stand and some other witnesses and said that Tinard, Washington, admitted to her that back in the mid-90s, he had killed Randy Stretch Walker. Randy Stretch Walker was the guy that was with Tupac when he was robbed and shot at the Quad City Studios. Tinard supposedly was in a gang beef with Stretch's brother, Majesty, and thought he was shooting at Majesty, but he killed Stretch. Majesty went on to form a record label with none other than E Money Baggs, infamous Queens goon, who supposedly Jay-Z was scared of.
Who did this, man? Let me know. Who did this? What?
E Money Baggs did it.
No, man.
And E Money Baggs ended up being one of the victims of, circle back to Supreme McGriff. Supreme McGriff was convicted of paying a hitman to kill E Money Baggs for killing his man, Black Just, of the Supreme team. So all these Queens gangsters all kind of floating around what Jam Master Jay's doing at the studio and in the streets. So if you're around enough killers, sooner or later, you might get killed. But Supreme McGriff is not someone who ended up having anything to do with it, even though he did get convicted of killing E Money Baggs and others. And then the second kind of suspect whose name got put out for some reason was Curtis Schoon, who was upset at me that I repeated an unverified story about him and Jay in Los Angeles and some drug activity. But he does have a long, interesting interview on the Lord Jamar podcast where he breaks down why he thinks his name got put into it, and he was ultimately, totally, well, he wasn't exonerated because he was never even a real suspect. It was just a rumor, though he almost had to turn himself in. And he makes the claim that Darren Big D Jordan, one-time employee of Def Jam and Jay's childhood friend, who he says Darren started working for the Queens prosecutor's office and for the NYPD back in the early 80s, right around the same time Jay got him a job for Rush Management, and his Big D's son, of course, who ended up being the trigger man, Carl Jordan Jr. So if Big D had police ties, he certainly would have been able to float rumors about Supreme, Schoon, or whoever and slow the progress of the case down, which may be what happened, even though Darren was never charged. And then another guy who a lot of insiders thought, had something shady going on was Randy Allen, Jay's partner in JMJ Records and a member of the Rusty Waters group with Jay's nephew, Bo Skaggs. Supposedly had a $500,000 life insurance out on Jay, which really isn't that weird when you're business partners, you do stuff like that. People claim Jay said Randy was embezzling money from him, but we have no documentation of Jam Master Jay saying that himself. So once again, that's just rumor and hearsay. The police don't seem to think Randy Allen was ever a suspect. But it is interesting that it was his sister was the accountant, Randy was the business partner. There was supposedly money missing, and they were both in the studio that night, though they say they didn't see anything. Well, I think in the end, his sister Lydia High at the trial said she saw a tattoo, but they certainly just didn't say they could recognize anybody for many, many, many years. Interesting. Now, a few weeks after Jay's death, his nephew, Bo Skaggs, who would go on to become one of the early New York Blood rappers, Bo Skaggs got shot right there on the street in Hollis, and he went to the police and said that Carl Jordan Jr. did it, who was only about 19 or 20 at the time. And Carl Jordan Jr. was taken into custody. But by the time the first court date came around, I guess his no snitching kicked in, or somebody got to him or whatever, because he didn't go to court, and Carl Jordan Jr. got out, and Bo Skaggs went on to dress up in red and make rap videos. Now, Jam Master Jay was a complicated guy in a complicated situation. Russell Simmons connected him with his brother Run and DMC to give them street cred back in the early 80s. In fact, that whole style of the Adidas suits and the Stetson hat, that came more so from Jam Master Jay. Russell Simmons told his brother and DMC to dress like Jay. So Jam Master Jay's involvement with Run DMC, I guess his face card gave them a little bit of protection from the increasingly mean streets of Hollis and Jamaica, Queens there in the early 80s before they got bit.
A look, it's just where we trying to come from, to show that we can relate with that also.
But in reality, it's all about the street.
He wasn't a serious street guy, but he was DJing in the parks. He was running around with these same guys that ended up being involved in this homicide, maybe breaking in houses. Supposedly they broke in houses in Jamaica Estates, the same neighborhood where Donald Trump grew up at. Here's Donald Trump's house. Jam Master Jay was shot at during one of these break-ins, and he bowed out of the burglary game. The other guys kept going, and Jay started doing park jams, and Russell Simmons approached him.